but people do an amazing job of separating themselves from one another. And I'm working with.
Is it a factor of, if we want to call it a factor of what gives them the little bit of what they have, which is it's what Malcolm used to say. It's the white mentality is like saying you're white. It's saying that you have, not authority, but what's the term?
Privilege.
Huh?
Privilege.
Privilege.
Yeah.
Exactly. So even if that's being lost, because they are going through this demotion, that's all they have left, and that's going to be stripped also.
Well, it's a very scary thing, and I really got the sense that people were deeply let down and deeply confused in Staten Island, and that they wanted answers. And the answers that they were seeking they were asking questions that people in Red Hook had been asking for decades.
Yeah, people in Far Rockaway had been asking for decades.
And out in Long Island, this is the first time I lived in Far Rockaway my whole life, and this is the first time I ever saw white middle class people becoming radical enough to go to the LIPA, go to the Long Island Power Authority,
and demand.
And demand with signs, and police, blockading. I was like, whoa, this is.
Where in Long Island were you?
No, I saw it.
You saw it through clips.
I saw it through clips, I think their headquarters is in Milroy's, Long Island. I'm not sure, but they became that disgruntled about what was going on with the power situation that they were, that was their privilege to get that power, and they, literally, and they went there and they protested, what was like.
Yeah, and I agree, and we feel for them because we are looking at things from a perspective of humanity.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a woman in a meeting in Staten Island, as Jason talks about this. She was literally in tears, saying, "We need help." And those are cries we've only heard in the black community in this country. Those are not cries we've heard in white communities. And there's a lot of white communities that don't get this viewing, that we don't get to see them also. And I'm sure they are. They have some real need.
Yeah, I remember. I went down to Occupy Atlanta last year, like in October. We went down there and we talked to this guy that actually helped us sleep on this floor because we were filming in different parts, different occupations up and down the coast. I talked to this black guy. He's been in Atlanta his whole life, and you know what? This is his opinion. This is not my personal opinion. I'm just projecting. But this is his opinion of the brewing radicalism that happened. He felt that this started in the early 2000s. People saw this coming with Seattle and stuff like that. But he felt that he feels that the white middle class they're just afraid they're gonna be the new niggers. That's what he felt like. Then you're gonna be the new niggers. It's gonna go back to the debt prisons. Originally it was poor white people who were being thrown in those prisons. When it comes to the birth of the prison industrial complex in this country, it was original debt prisons for recent indentured servants and people who couldn't pay their land. And he felt that because of the deregulation, because of the banking interest, we're just going back to that time again. Even though it's gonna be way more sophisticated, but this is what's happening. And for the white middle class, we're going back to that moment again. We're approaching that moment in which the real elite fears the most when we're both on the same plane. For the white poor people and black poor people, we all know that the same weapons are being used against us. He feels that Occupy was just like the embryo of this. Yes. There's gonna be a lot of problems, but eventually something.
It's a coming out effect where people they sense and they're feeling the pressures. People that are educated are getting their college degrees, and guess what? They're working for Starbucks. Maybe they're going to Walbombs. They're doing stuff competing with Mexicans in certain restaurants in the city. Yeah, literally, since Mexicans are there all over the place in the city. So those are all the factors that I think people are dealing with, and those are very, very crucial situations. And they don't see where it's going, and it keeps coming at them. This is the silent storm, because everybody can see a hurricane, but the economic storm, it's very silent, and it keeps hitting people.
And Sandy was literally a silent storm. People had water silently come into their houses and rise up, So, I mean, everything seems to be little and symbolic when it comes to what happened with Sandy in New York City, you know.
You know, you're a young filmmaker. You're trying to see and touch on these issues. I want you to sort of bring us to what we're watching now, which is your second, the video that you gave us, because you have a lot of other stuff that you cover.
Anti-oppression.
What is the theme is anti-oppression? So just talk to us about it.
Well, I mean, early on, like, you know, early Occupy Sandy stuff, there was some complaints that, you know, these, like, I guess this is put the language out there, you know, upper middle class white educated people will go to these, you know, relief sites, you know, and a lot of people who were going there really felt like they were being looked down, you know. They felt like, you know, they just, the training wasn't there, and also the kind of the disaster tourism that was happening. You know, volunteers will wholeheartedly go to these volunteer trainings early on, but they would go there and just take pictures and stuff like that, you know, with people in pain and suffering. I mean, they didn't like, and that wasn't going the right track of what we're trying to do. So eventually, you know, a training kind of, you know, organization happened to properly train people to go out there, you know, and realize, put more about the mutual aid and that charity. You know, we're not trying to put band-aids on shotgun wounds. You know, this is pretty much the narrative when it comes to disaster capitalism. You know, maintaining the system by giving people a little winky-dink money. You know, that's not our motto here. Our motto is to connect with people on a person-to-person basis and help them build power in the long run to fight these struggles that they've been fighting long before Sandy came around. So that was pretty much the anti-oppression training was about, you know. So
that's what people are watching right now.
Yotam, he's the man. So exactly. He's down for Rockaway. So.
That's right. So those are some very interesting things. And I think one of the things that we're doing here as we look at the aftermath of Sandy, but we're also discussing, it's intertwined in the conversation, which is solutions. How do we come out of these things? Because as I just stated, as you've given, and both of you have pretty much given a very clear view of this, and which is people are, by and large, even in the black community, even in the communities that are pretty much whole, you know, in other words, they're very much the same, people's color, but there isn't a real vibrant sense of community. And it's the crisis that has to sort of awaken things that are dormant in people, Jason?
I think that, you know, as far as community goes, there's this real general sense that America is America and that we are one big community. But one of the experiences, an experience that I've had for a good part of my life, and I've seen it grow more and more with the economic differences between people. I mean, there's a real sharp divide between the haves and the have-nots. I think that's the whole idea of the 99% versus the 1%. But in that 99%, there is a very wide there's a very wide range of folks that are living in that community of the 99%. One of the things that I saw, you know, and it was something that I kind of heard you say, was that people from community to community have a very difficult time communicating with one another. They really struggle. One of the things that I saw at Occupy Wall Street was that the young really had a very difficult time talking to the old. The poor had a very difficult time talking to the rich. Women had a difficult time talking to men. And blacks certainly had a very difficult time talking to whites and whites to blacks, and vice versa for all these things. And then combinations of all of that, you know, young white folks to old black folks. Forget it. It was like two different conversations.
A huge sense of discomfort, which also gives you opportunities to sort of get past those limitations.
If you can. I mean, really, if you can. I truly believe that the struggle is really unifying the 99%. I don't think that the struggle is toppling the systems that are pushing down on us, or the systems that we've long since outgrown. I think that the struggle is really getting people talking. I know that from what I saw at Occupy Wall Street, it seems as though that the idea of progressive or nonprofit or grassroots has become something that seems to be owned by a particular group. And it seems to be right now in the American culture that particular group is kind of an educated white I don't even really know how to describe it, but organic kind of, it's a group of folks that, you know, that really have a very difficult time talking to a lot of the other folks that are also struggling with things. And one of the...
But we have to give them credit, though. They've done a
Oh,
lot of work.
Absolutely. I give credit where credit is due.
Because those people that you're referring to are also the people that have been on the internet. So they've garnered and they've gathered a lot of information. And sometimes it's the biggest challenge that we all have. When you do have information, how do you pass it?
Well, I also think that particular group is the group that really is the brains behind the operation when it comes to nonprofit and relief work organizations. Mm-hmm. And so there is a real interesting meeting when I think Messiah might have seen it, where they had to have that kind of anti-oppression training and conversation, so people didn't feel like managers were now stepping in, even if they were from Occupy Sandy, to come and now manage the situation. And there is a real tension there, and it really doesn't. Based out of what? Feel free. I think it's come out of it. There's an interesting culture that's grown up in the United States that it's kind of supported by our educational system. It's supported by our nonprofit industrial complex. It's supported by what we kind of see and what we hear on the news, that there is a population in our society that really knows what progressive means, what grassroots means, what activism means, and that there is a large number of people who are kind of left out of that, although they are the ones that this population is doing the fighting for. You know, there are lots of people in Harlem that have been in the struggle, that live in the struggle, that aren't that population, that aren't white, college-educated progressives that come in and you get that sense that the managers are here now. You know, or they even think that they are the ones to provide the answers to. And there's lots of work that's been going on for a long, long, long time.
Are you going to speak to us about the meeting you had today? Are you going to bring that in?
The meeting I had today, no. Because that was a frustrating conversation. But
well, it's good to talk about frustration. I see frustration in your face.
I met a wonderful, wonderful woman who I have unbelievable vision for. I know she probably does. She's humble though. That started back in April. A group called Take Back Our City is when she hatched the idea. And Take Back Our City is really is a truly grassroots group that is going to be working in the hope. And I'll send her this video, but it's going to be working in 22 different communities around the city that are based on the 22 seats that are going to be open in city council in 2013 because of term limits. There are going to be some city councilors that aren't going to be able to run as incumbents.
A real cleanup, as it
A
were.
real moment to make some real change.
Yeah, and I feel that this this election is going to be so important. I mean, it's pretty much going to set forth what's going to happen in New York City in the next decades. This election. I mean, it's because there's authority. They want more authority. They want to privatize everything in the city, and they want people to go to Dwayne Meade to get emergency room treatment. This is the future they want of this city. So I feel that this 2013 is such an important election year. When it comes in the city.
But how, let's say you talk about elections. But how do grassroots movements affirm and give their narrative to what's happening? How do they author the change of moment that's happening also, because the pressures are coming to bear?
Well, one of the things that so now the same dog is attacking, but attacking people that have different vulnerabilities. And yes, Staten Island, where I was, is a very working class neighborhood. But those folks, if they look up, they see the hawks. The hawks that are flying over their neighborhood, the developers who want that property. It's beachfront property. It's beautiful property, and moments like this mean that people and they feel those vultures, they're calling them, overhead, and these are again Republican, kind of. More leaning to the right folks, if not Tea Party folks, if not retired firemen, if not retired police officers. It's a large community of that. If you go to Red Hook, there's a lot of conversation that those same vultures are flying overhead, and all of these communities, you know. So with that kind of interest at stake, this next election, if we, the people on a grassroots level, don't get our stuff together, those communities that are vulnerable to zone change, to community board giving the nod, to city councilors that are also in support of, and a mayor that will develop Red Hook, which is not a bad piece of property, by the way. You know, they'll take that up. They'll take it up, similar to the East Village, and the East Village, which looks like Europe now, similar to Williamsburg.
Give us an idea again, because off the top of my head, I know Red Hook is right off the Battery Tunnel. Is that correct?
I'm not as familiar with New York as I would like to be. I think I can't. It's like, I'm not from New York, but I know what I know. I know gentrification when I see it and feel it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
It's like Smith, it's like Smith and Ninth.
I see, exactly.
Yeah, so I was on Ninth.
No, so exactly right. So it's right off Battery. It's right off the Battery Tunnel. It's that old area, and so I know the area a little bit.
You were testing me?
No. I was making sure. I was making sure I was connecting the community with what I know of the area. Mm-hmm. So in that area, you have a lot of buildings, a lot of people that
fixing the trains up.
Exactly, fixing the trains up. Yeah. Now further down, those are old industry, all factories that are in the 30s that are gone pretty much. The factories don't exist anymore. They're just remnants of them.
Yeah, that was that.
And just a few maybe left. So you know that area a little bit? You've walked around?
Yeah, I walked through the Red Hook.
Yeah, these areas are devastated. And you could move now from 4th, which is 3rd Avenue, 4th Avenue, and then you move all the way down to everything else.
I'm not sure. I think is Red Hook the largest public housing in the city, or is it?
It's one of the biggest public housing in the city.
I think it's like one of the top 1 or 2.
And from what I understand, they were turned off 2 days. Their utilities and plumbing and everything was turned off days before Sandy, and were left off. And people who are there. And you know, I don't like talking like this, but we're there in large part on public assistance of some sort, couldn't, and don't have a vested mortgage interest, said, I'm going, and they took the aid that they're receiving to use in Red Hook, and they took it and they went somewhere else, which lowers the ability of that community to now fight for that property as the vultures circle. So they're just like in New Orleans, massive shifts in interest start moving in after moments like this. And the people down in
New Orleans, these people were hit even more. I mean, forget it. Than these people over here. I think I've had some responses, and the fact that you've had organizations like Occupy Wall Street or Occupy Sandy, People Power Movement, and other communities that have gone out there and pushed and given their help.
Yeah, we have a lot of people who experienced Katrina and was up here helping. You know, there's a lot of people,
which is awesome.
Yeah,
which is awesome. So. Well, let's look at some solutions as we sort of wrap this up a little bit. Give us your take on solutions, because I know Jason is working on open space, because he talked about it, which is communication, which is a real vital. And usually people don't value that a lot. They take that for granted. But communication is such an essence, because it sort of interwoven in communication is your humanity, is your sense of being, is your sense of where we need to go. So communication is a vital part of how we talk to each other, how we express caring, and so on and so forth. And sometimes that's just not there. So give us some of your vision as we sort of wrap it up. In terms of some solutions, and what do you see and what you're working on also?
I mean, what I've been working on a documentary film called State of Evolution, and it pretty much starts off with the first January in 2011, the first Egyptian solidarity marches at the United Nations. You know, which woke up to me when it came to the difference between how mainstream media covered stuff. Like they said, there was like 5 people who showed up. It was like the whole Egyptian community in New York City were there. But I just seeing like how this momentum built from Albany, occupation attempt in Albany to Bloombergville, which was a 2.5-week occupation against Bloomberg and the budget cuts, austerity before we called it austerity, and then that organization, the New Yorkers Against Budget Cuts Coalition, which helped the first like GAs to organize Occupy Wall Street, and then
you've been working a lot on that one.
Yeah, and then exploded, and then all the way to the end to Occupy Homes. And I guess for me, for my abilities is just capturing this history and capturing what's happening, you know. So like people can see that, you know, it wasn't like a Martin Luther King person who showed up. It wasn't like, you know, Ella Baker or somebody showed up. Like this is even more like everyday people off the street, you know, streetwise people, you know, going off the street and building power and building a sense of agency. You know, we need more of that in order to have a more effective horizontalism. You know, right now it's still kind of like we talk about it, but we see it in some places and not at all. You know, so it's about this building that, you know, building more of effective within community basis, you know. So, and then build up towards something more citywide. So,
a lot of work that needs to keep working.
Yeah.
Jason, wrap it up for us. Open space. What's your vision and you know, I've had an opportunity to sit in some of these meetings. I think it's tremendous. It's a great opportunity for people to learn, to communicate with one another and keep talking and also doing. Not just talking, but moving from the phase of it would be theory, practice, and practice to theory, and then maybe changing the paradigm a little bit, practice, theory, practice. So a little bit more activity, a little bit more hands-on.
Well, New York is a massive, massive city. But one of the goals of the open space meetings, and certainly the goal of Take Back Our City, is to create spaces in different we're going to just go according to council districts. In different districts of New York City, creating spaces in venues or structureless structures where we can actually invite people in to organize the organizers as opposed to organizers trying to organize the people. People can come in and are invited to come in, deep invitation into communities, to come in and have the conversations that they want to have, to express the concerns that they have about what's going on in their communities, and then trying to provide a space where they can have those conversations hosted on a kind of private, not Facebook, a social networking platform called Ning, where people can create profiles and create groups and build groups, and there's room for blogs and things like that. But I think that the most important thing for us to get working on immediately is to create space for conversation. I think that one of the things that was very clear after Occupy Sandy, whether I was down in the Battery, which was a whole, southern tip of Manhattan, which a whole different level of activity was going on, or in the East Village, or in that place in Queens that just burned to the ground, or in Rockaway, or in Red Hook, or down in Staten Island. When the power goes out and the lights go out and there's no water and there's no food, things get pretty simple. Yeah. You know, things get pretty simple, pretty quick. And I really think that it provides an unbelievable opportunity to try to get people together and have some conversations, because what we agree on is this.
People are listening, though.
And our disagreements are like this. We share so much in common, but we divide ourselves over such simple ideas that we have a real interest right now, if not now, right now more than ever, to really try to figure out how do we work and live in our agreements and move forward together and learn how to support one another. I think it's going to be very important that the people who live and love Red Hook are going to have to support the people down in Staten Island. And the people down in Staten Island, in turn, will support and show up for the people in Red Hook, because they're being attacked by the same dog, and that goes for the Rockaways. And
they're suffering the same consequences.
They will suffer the same consequences if they don't learn how to support one another. And that really, when I'm down and I'm working with people that I know that were living in Zuccotti Park and Occupy Wall Street, and I see them working for weeks on end with people who are Tea Party Republicans, and they're doing it well, I know that what is separating those people? It's not them, because they know how to do it. They know how to get down and work together and support each other. But there's something that is preventing them, that isn't them, from doing that
Definitely.
more. And and starting to
there is a false identification of interest factor that's very important to know. This guy might think that his interest is completely different than yours, and you might think that your interest is completely different.
Well, I think that the Tea Party people have an interest in solving. They don't like poverty. But Tea Party Republicans don't know that a lot of the policies that they make don't support ending poverty. They've got us so separated. It does. Yeah. So, but it's amazing to see people who have vastly different views when focused on the work well together and share. 99% of life is in common. They have 99% of their life they agree on, and it's very simple. And we divide ourselves over. So open space and TBOC is designed to bridge those kinds of gaps and to let us know that we need to be supporting each other out here, or we're all going to suffer the same fate. So. I don't know. I'm probably going to get this from you and send this out and do more talking. We have an open invitation to have to TBOC conversations.
I wanna first say thank you to the both of you. I mean,
thank you
for you guys coming here and giving and sharing this with the public. That's the viewing public that's going to be watching this. And again, you guys are great, and continue to do the work that you do, because it's the every little work that each of you do that sort of sparks a lot of other people. And pretty much what the Messiah is doing, if I can take the work that's being done also and just propagate and just push it out and so on and so forth, the more the merrier. And we have to keep these spaces open for as many people. And we are looking at human race. We are just looking at, that's the race that we're concerned with, the human race, and life in general on this planet.